Hello Bookworm family, welcome back to my channel. I'm Danny. If you're new, go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell because it's always a mystery when I post new videos. And if you're not already following me on Instagram, it is at Danny's Book Corner 2018. Instead of putting that in the video, I'm going to start linking that down below in the description box. You guys can just copy and paste it when you want to go search my Instagram, because I discovered that's how I like to look for Instagrams. It's just copy what the person says it is and paste it into Instagram. So I'm gonna do that for you guys. Guys, I have tried filming this video 5 times now. This is the 5th time. So if you're watching this, this was the good one. Woo! Finally! But I'm starting to get frustrated with myself because I'm just not feeling well. And I feel like when I don't feel well, I start going off on like tangents of like, oh, now I'm sick and I feel like death and the world is over and blah, blah, blah. I'm sorry if I do that in this video, but I'm just not feeling well. I'm also like looking at all the stuff that I have to do. My dance season starts up this week and I'm just like, I have so much stuff I have to do, but I have like a little minor fever. I'm just not feeling great. So if I sound funny, that's why too. Anywho, I'm gonna jump right into the wrap up as soon as possible because 5th time, guys, of recording the same thing over and over. Let's hope I can do it right this time. But yeah, basically my dance season starts up this week, so I probably won't read as much in September. I am still going to try to do my reading challenge with my Facebook group because it's Harry Potter themed this month, and I feel like I have to, even though I was like, no, September is going to be a tough month because I gotta like start everything. But I'm also looking at, I have 2 months until I go to the Wizarding World, and I want to finish my Harry Potter books before I go. Like, obviously I've already read them all and seen all the movies and stuff, but I want to reread them all, including Crimes of Grindelwald, including Cursed Child, because I've never read Cursed Child before, so Cursed Child will be a new read for me, including the, like, Hogwarts library over here that I have that's, like, the Tales of Beetleborg and stuff like that, and this, How Harry Cast a Spell, how Harry Potter actually relates to Christian values and other religious values, and basically like a bunch of people like banned Harry Potter because it didn't relate to their religious values, and this kind of proves like how it does. Anywho, I want to do all that, so I still have a ton of books to read before I go, and I have 2 months, so let's hope do it, guys. I don't know if I can, but I'm hoping I can. So I'm doing the reading challenge and I'm hoping that I will blow through a bunch of books. Please let me blow through these books. That's my hope anyway. But for August, I read 10 books. My eye is wicked itchy. I'm super sorry. But I read 10 books and I don't plan to read that many in September, but I'm hoping I do. I'm not gonna like talk down about myself yet. Hoping I will read 10 books in the month of September. But I did read 10 in August. However, a lot of them are short books because I got my Kindle. So when I got my Kindle, I wanted to be able to like test out how Audible worked on it, test out how like ebooks worked and like how to like highlight and all that stuff. And I also want to test out, my library has this wicked cool thing called Overdrive. I don't know if your guys' libraries do that, but you can basically like borrow books from the library and they'll be sent directly to your Kindle in downloadable format for reading. And then you return them like you return them a library book, but you literally have to go nowhere. So it's an introvert's dream. So yeah, I've basically been trying out the Kindle, also been listening to audiobooks and stuff like that. I don't know. Just been a lot of Kindle love, and when I was working with my Kindle, I downloaded a lot of middle grade books so I could read them quickly, so I could keep practicing like how to work it and stuff, because I'm not technologically savvy in any way, so this was definitely a learning curve for me. Also, trying to find better ways to Instagram from my Kindle, because obviously there's a glare on it, so I'm trying to find better ways to like post my Instagram pictures. I haven't quite mastered it yet. Hoping throughout this month I can kind of figure out a little bit more of how to do better photos with it. But anyway, that's why a lot of the books that I read were pretty short, but still I read. So that's good. So the first book that I read in the month of August was Please by Jericho Brown. This book, I actually read this in college as a part of my capstone project. We had to read it, then create our own poetry collection, then create then give our poetry presentations, which was a poetry reading, which was the most nerve-wracking thing I think I've ever done. But basically, this book goes through the life of Jericho Brown in poetry format, obviously. And it's basically about how he grew up in an abusive situation and he had to fight for equality when he discovered he was gay and all this stuff. It is definitely a great book if you are somebody who is like on the verge of discovering yourself. I only gave it 3 out of 5 stars this time around. I think when I was in college, I definitely gave it a 5-star rating. And a lot of the poems have still stuck with me throughout the years, but I think of it as where I am in my life now as a 27-year-old woman didn't apply to me as much as it did back when I was in college. So if you are somebody who's like on the verge of discovering yourself, maybe discovering your sexuality or looking for a good poetry collection with minority rep or gay rep or anything like that, this is definitely a great book and I highly recommend it. Just wasn't where I was in my life right now. So the next book that I read in the month of August, I have my cheat sheet down here, if you see me looking down here a lot, was Stuart Little by E.B. White. I had never actually read this book before, and in July I was babysitting and the girl and I watched Stuart Little the movie, and I was like, I wonder if the book is actually like that. Spoiler alert, it's not. Basically, the storyline behind Stuart Little is similar to the movie. It is a mouse who is brought in, so in the movie he's adopted, in the book he's born into a family of humans and they raise him as their own son and all that stuff, but he's a mouse, so he's got a lot of like differences and stuff from a normal human child. This is one of the rare cases where I thought the movie was better, which sounds horrible, but I thought the movie was better just because this book had a wicked weird ending. If you guys have read this book, I don't want to spoil it too much, but basically Stuart like goes away and he meets a girl who's tiny, and like from there it just got weird. Like, he's a very selfish, pompous mouse to begin with, and he kind of does his own thing. I don't know. I just didn't really like the characterization or the ending of the book. So if you guys have read this, you know. If you haven't read it, maybe just pick it up because it was only 131 pages. Maybe just pick it up and read it, and then you can see if you like it or think the ending's weird like I did. But yeah, I only gave this book 2 out of 5 stars because it just wasn't really that fantastic to me. Anyway, moving on. The next book that I read in the month of August was Rivals, Frenemies Who Changed the World by Scott McCormick, not Steve McCormick, Scott McCormick, and this was an Audible original, so I listened to it on Audible, and it was basically like listening to kind of Adam Ruins Everything kind of thing, because it was just a very sarcastic take on 4 different historical elements, from paleontologists to the people who make Nike and Adidas shoes, to Queens, to Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr. So it was a very interesting read, or listen. I guess I listened, didn't really read. I am not a history buff, so I only gave this book 3 out of 5 stars, but if you are a history buff, I could see people really liking this because it definitely gives modern language to historical events, and it also has that sarcastic Adam Ruins Everything tone that I super love. So that's pretty much all I have to say about that book. It was just an Audible original. I don't even know if it really counts as reading, but I count it as reading because audiobooks count as reading, so I counted it. The next book that I read for the month of August was Girl Made of Stars by Ashley Herring Blake. I actually heard about this book from Becca in the Books. If you guys are not following her on Instagram. She does have an Instagram too, but I definitely meant YouTube. If you guys are not subscribed to her YouTube channel or have ever seen it, you guys definitely should because I get a lot of great book recommendations from her channel. This book was really, really hard hitting. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars, so that I really, really enjoyed this book. It was definitely a 5-star prediction for me, but basically it is about 2 twins, a girl and a boy, and they are super close until the girl finds out that her brother is accused of raping one of her best friends, and she has no reason to not believe her best friend or her brother, but she's kind of stuck in between, like, where, like, was it rape, was it not rape, kind of thing. And it touches a lot on rape culture, on PTSD, on a lot of emotional, mental health stuff. It's a very triggering book, but it is so good. It is so good, and it is unfortunately very relevant to our lives today, because it's just heartbreaking that, like, so many girls could relate to this book right now. And it's so, I feel like, just like where our world is right now, it's unfortunate because sometimes it is a he said, she said situation, and people take sides, and that sucks, instead of just taking what you've done at face value and admitting to it. There's a lot of people who deny what they've done, or there are unfortunately girls who lie about those things, and it's just, it was super hard for me to read, just because it is way too close to what society is like right now. However, I really enjoyed this book, and I feel like the main character was amazing in handling this, and she kind of admits that she, like, knows her brother did it, like, right from the start, but she doesn't want to believe her brother did it, and obviously her parents don't believe her brother did it because they don't want to believe that her brother did it. And I feel like that's true for anything. If a popular kid does something wrong, or if a family member does something wrong, you don't want to believe that they did it, but sometimes they did, and it's unfortunate. But this was a really great read, and I highly recommend it. I just do slap a big trigger warning on this, because it is triggering in so many different ways, from mental health to rape culture to sexual assault to abuse to so many triggers in this book. Just read with caution, but it is so good that I highly recommend it. So the next book that I read in the month of August was, where is it? Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie. I have never actually read Peter Pan before. I love the movie, especially the Mary Martin version. I think Mary Martin is the most awesome person in the whole world. I think she revolutionized what standards for stage was and stuff like that. But basically, if you don't know the story of Peter Pan, which I'm sure you do, but if you don't, it is about a boy who lives in Neverland, and he goes to London because he loses his shadow at the Darling house when he was listening to stories that their mother was telling, and he ends up taking all three Darling children, Wendy, Michael, and John, back to Neverland because he wants Wendy to be the mother of the Lost Boys, who are all children who have refused to grow up, and they are in Neverland so that they never had to become an adult. So relatable to where I am in life. Can I go to Neverland, please? I don't want to be an adult anymore. I loved it. I thought it was a great fantasy. I just feel like it's not super appropriate for kids, which is what it was written for. I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars just because there was some swearing, some inappropriate wording and stuff like that, which it was, I'm sure, acceptable at the time it was written, which was, I saw 2 different days that was copyrighted. It was 1904 or 1911. I'm pretty sure that the concept of Peter Pan was 1904, but the book was actually written in 1911, I think. But basically, I just found it kind of inappropriate. Like, I would not read it to my niece, and I'm pretty sure it's geared towards younger kids, because obviously Peter Pan is geared towards younger kids, but it's definitely a darker view than what Disney has given us. So, yeah. Anyway, I don't really have much more to say about Peter Pan. I mean, you guys pretty much know what Peter Pan is. The next book that I read was, again, an Audible original, which was really funny, but it was called For Everywhere. It was by Steve Burns and Stephen Drozd. But yes, I said Steve Burns. If you know who that is, it is Steve from Blue's Clues. He wrote a book, and it was on Audible, and he read it. Basically, this is definitely a kid's book, but honestly, even though it was a kid's book, it wasn't like a corny kid's book. It was like a more adult version of a kid's book. But basically, it is about Moat, who is the final unicorn in the world, and all he wants is to make friends to start a band. So he goes along a journey to find a giant who is going to be his drummer, and then he finds the Itsy Betsy, his spider, who's their manager, and then they meet Princess Rainbow, who they want to be their guitarist. However, Princess Rainbow has a lot of family problems with her parents not getting along and verging on divorce, and that causes her to start a lot of weather-related issues and stuff between her parents kind of get in the way of the band. So it's a really good overall moral of, like, your parents' choices are not your fault, that I feel like is way too relevant for our world right now. I know a lot of kids whose parents are going through divorce, are divorced, blah, 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 that blame themselves. So I think that this was a great book to be like, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. Your parents' choices are not your choices. You make your own choices. You vow to do something better than them, or, you know, you don't have to take sides either. And I feel like that's a very, very, very good moral for kids these days. So yeah, I gave that book 3 out of 5 stars. I don't think I actually said the rating, but I gave that book 3 out of 5 stars because I liked the moral. Obviously, it was for kids, not really for adults. But I also didn't really like unicorns until I read this book. Like, I thought unicorns are kind of overrated, but now I kind of love unicorns because it was funny. Anyway, the next book that I read was an ebook. It was called Like Pickle Juice on a Cookie by Julie Sternberg. This was the very first book that I read on my Kindle. I was very happy with it. It is a verse format or stanza format, however you want to say it, book for kids, which I thought was super awesome because I love verse format books, and I'm glad that they're being introduced to younger ages now, because how awesome is that to start learning about how poetry doesn't have to rhyme and all that stuff super young. So this book was only 128 pages. It was wicked short, especially because it was in verse format. I think I got through it in like 45 minutes. But it is basically about a girl named Eleanor whose babysitter moves away, and she vows that nobody will ever be able to replace her babysitter because she was the best babysitter in the whole world. And when her parents bring in a new babysitter, she has to learn to adjust to a new life with this new person responsible for caring for her. So I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. I thought it was wicked cute, and I really enjoyed that it was written in verse format. I would have just liked a little bit more meat behind it to really kind of show that you can get full details about characters and places and settings and stuff even in verse format. I just felt like it was a very basic book. The next book that I read was Mr. Popper's Penguins by Richard Atwater. I also read this on ebook, also blew through it in a day, same day that I got my Kindle. It is about a man, Mr. Popper, who is very, very into learning things about the Arctic, and he always has wanted to go to one of the North or South Poles, and he writes a letter to an explorer who goes to the North and South Poles, and he sends him a penguin, and the penguin ends up getting lonely, so Mr. Popper gets a second penguin so that he's not lonely, and they have a penguin family, and the penguins are wicked expensive to take care of, so they end up putting them kind of in like a penguin circus kind of thing. They like start a penguin circus kind of thing. It was a wicked cute book. I didn't really personally care for it too much because there's a lot of reference to like abuse of animals, and there's also a lot of like underage working and stuff like that, which at the time, this book was published in 1938. So 1938, that wasn't a super big deal, but as somebody reading it now, I was just kind of like, ooh, that's a lot of animal abuse reference and children working instead of being in school and stuff like that. So it was just kind of wasn't my thing, but I still loved the scenes with the penguins because they were so cute. But yeah, 3 out of 5 stars. Not the best thing in the whole world, but it was a cute little read to kind of get me introduced to my Kindle. The next book that I read was also a Kindle book. It is a graphic memoir called Elle Defo by C.C. Bell. So this is a book that, it is definitely written for kids, but I've been wanting to read it because I was always, like, trained that defo was a bad word, like, as a kid growing up. So I kind of wanted to see how it was brought into a kid's book. But basically, C.C. Bell wrote this graphic memoir in a kid's format about her own life when she turned 4 and she became deaf. And basically her life growing up around people who didn't fully understand deaf culture or anything like that. She was somebody who did not want to learn sign language or anything like that. She wanted to be pretty much like a hearing person, just had hearing aids and stuff like that. And it was a very, very good read. I think it's a very good way to teach kids about differences, accepting your differences, and loving your differences. And that it doesn't matter if you can hear or if you can't hear and all that stuff. But basically she gets like this super powerful hearing aid that she's embarrassed of because the teachers have to wear a microphone, and she's really embarrassed, so she creates for herself an alter ego that's a superhero that she names Elle Defo because she heard somebody say Defo on TV, and she was like, oh, that's actually really funny. Why do they call her that? Kind of thing. And like, she wasn't offended by it at all. So that's why she named herself Elle Defo. And it was written in a graphic novel format. Really, really great book. I highly recommend it to kids. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars because I thought it was a really, really good book. I don't know why I didn't give it 5 out of 5 stars, honestly. I feel like it was just because the characters were, like, drawn as animals, and I would have preferred them just be human. Like, because, like, when you see an animal doing something, you're like, oh, that's cool, but, like, that's not real. But, like, prejudice is very real, and learning to accept your differences is very real, so I kind of would have just liked the animals to not be there and just have it be people. But anyway, that was like my one criticism for the book. I thought it was a really entertaining book, and I enjoyed it a lot. The last book that I read for the month of August was Nipped in the Bud by Susan Sleeman. Guys, this book has been on my shelf for, I think, over a year now. It's been a year, something like that. But basically, this book is about Paige Turner. I don't know. Eye Roll City. Paige Turner, who gets into a fight with the, like, I don't know, he's not really a mayor, he's like head councilman or something like that, of the town that she's living in Oregon, and she, the next day finds him dead in her garden, so people obviously think it was her because she had a fight with him, and it was her garden and her shovel and all that stuff that killed him. So she goes on a mission to discover who actually did it with the help of her best friend and her attorney, who she ends up falling in love with. So this was like one of those books, I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. It had potential to be a good book. It did. I love mysteries. I actually enjoyed the mystery element of it. There were some really funny parts with like her radio station and stuff, though it was a little campy and a little over the top for me. I thought it was pretty funny. I just don't understand why we always have to have a love interest. Why can't we just be independent women, man? Why do we need a man to help us solve our problems? But also, the thing that was, this is a Christian book, so the whole, like, theme of it was supposed to be like letting go of control to God and letting him help you, which I totally support because, as you guys know, I'm a Christian, but I super understand where that was coming from. It just barely talked about it. And like at the very end of the book, it was like, oh, give up control to God, blah, blah, blah. Like it didn't talk about her really going to church. It didn't talk about her like having like this big like aha moment or praying or anything like that. Just her friend was like, you should give up control to God. And she's like, I'll try. Like it's just this really like lame kind of version of Christianity. Like, oh, I mean, if you say so, friend, sure, I'll be a Christian kind of thing. Like, there was no, like, I don't know. I guess not everybody has that, like, aha moment when they turn their lives over to God, but at the same time, it's like, really? There wasn't even, like, it was, like, 2 sentences. That's what you give me? 2 sentences? Anyway, I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. I thought the mystery elements were good. I just don't always understand why we need a man to do everything, to help us with everything. Like, come on, women, be empowered. But yeah, that's all the books that I read for the month of August. I don't know. I had a lot of good reads, but I really only had the 1 5-star. The rest of them just kind of like middle of the ground, good, acceptable, decent books. But overall, that's what I read. I'm hoping August will be good to me too. I just can't make promises. Just because it's the crazy time of year. But yeah. If you guys have any questions about any of the books that you saw in this video or anything else, please feel free to leave a comment down below. And yeah, that's about it. Have a good one. Bye!